Let's go. Parker Mecha. Shinko, Parker Mecha. Episode 7, The Failing Lattice第7話 Bungarayuku goes to the alien world. The crystal towers at the basin's edge had begun, for the first time since the family arrived on this world, to crack. Not shatter, not yet. But Princess Parker watched the hairline fractures spread across the nearest tower's surface, with the specific, focused dread of someone witnessing a structure fail in slow motion, each fracture line a confirmation of everything her instruments had been warning her about for weeks. "This is accelerating faster than any model predicted," she said, her voice carrying through the family channel with an urgency she rarely allowed herself. 3 Crystal Lattice Zones have lost more than 60% of their resonance stability in the last 48 hours alone. At this rate, she paused, recalculating. At this rate, we're looking at total network failure within days, not weeks. Cassandra was already moving the Cyber Viper towards the nearest failing zone, her sensors reaching into the destabilizing crystal structure with the same patient thoroughness that had defined her growth since the very first lessons this world had taught her. "I'm reading the same acceleration in the deep pulse," she confirmed. "Whatever Abaddon is becoming, the timeline is compressing. This isn't a slow correction anymore. It's building towards something with real speed behind it." The dragons. The migration's distress had become impossible to ignore. Amin watched it from the Vanguard's elevated position. Hundreds of the great creatures moving in patterns that bore no resemblance to the patient, coordinated flows the family had first learned to respect months earlier. They circled, they doubled back, they clustered together in formations that read, even to instruments without any emotional interpretation capacity, as something close to panic. "They're disoriented," he reported. "The lattice provided the rhythm their migration has always followed. Without a stable rhythm to follow, they don't know where they're supposed to be." "Can you guide them?" Mary asked, holding the Aegis in position above the settlement's most vulnerable approach. "I can try," Amin said, "but I'm one presence. There are hundreds of them, and the confusion is spreading faster than I can address it individually." He moved into the largest cluster anyway, the same patient, precise technique that had once calmed a single creature in the storm basin, now applied at a scale his training had never specifically anticipated. Wing by wing, he redirected what he could, the Vanguard's careful presence offering the dragons something their own instincts could no longer provide. A fixed point, steady and unthreatening, around which their disordered movement could begin to organize itself.
"It helped. Marginally. Temporarily. This isn't sustainable," Amin said, after the 3rd hour. "I can manage dozens. I cannot manage hundreds indefinitely."
The Forge and the Failing Zones. Amira worked through the night, her engineering instincts pushed to a scale she had never previously been asked to match. "I can reinforce individual zones," she reported, the Forge's systems already deployed at the basin's most critical failure point. "But I can't reinforce all of them simultaneously, and the failures are happening faster than I can move between sites." She pulled up her own projection, cross-referencing it against Princess's network model. "If I prioritize the zones closest to the settlement, I can probably buy us another week of stability in the areas that matter most for civilian safety. But the network itself, the full planetary system, that's beyond what the Forge alone can hold together." "Understood," Mary said. "Prioritize civilian protection. We address the larger network problem differently." "Differently how?" Amira asked. Mary was quiet for a moment. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But Cassandra is closer to understanding Abaddon than any of us. If there's an answer, it's down there with whatever is waking up." The Vaylin Alliance, the Vaylin Order's response to the accelerating crisis, had matured, in the weeks since their first warnings, into something the family had come to depend on, as genuinely as they depended on each other. Knights worked alongside Forge-deployed engineering teams at every failing zone, their resonance rituals combining with human technology, in the same hybrid cooperation that had first proven itself at the basin's eastern reach months earlier. It was not enough to stop the deterioration, but it slowed it, zone by careful zone, buying the family time they did not yet know how to use. "Our oldest stories never described a correction at this speed," the eldest commander admitted to Cassandra, the two of them watching a crystal tower's resonance flicker and struggle to stabilize beneath their combined effort. "I do not know if this is simply how the cycle was always meant to unfold, or if something is making it move faster than it should." "I don't know either," Cassandra said. "But we're not facing it alone. That matters more now than it ever has." Earth, the reunion, en route. Aboard the small vessel cutting its careful path across the vast distance between two worlds, Prince Parker had become, by any honest measure, considerably harder to share close quarters with. 4 weeks, he said, for what Rashim privately calculated to be the 11th time that day. 4 weeks remaining, and the navigation array just informed me that our projected arrival window has shifted by 6 hours due to a gravitational variance nobody flagged before launch. 6 hours, Dad, Rashim said, with the patient, long-suffering tone of a son, who had been managing his father's mood for the better part of a month in deep space. "Out of 6 weeks, that is not a significant variance." "It is significant to me," Prince said. I have spent this entire journey reviewing every structural specification of this vessel, and I am increasingly convinced that the engineering team cut corners on the secondary life support redundancy. I did not cut corners, Amir said from the command interface, his voice carrying the specific, measured patience of someone who had explained this exact concern on 4 separate occasions already. The secondary redundancy exceeds standard specifications by a margin of 30%. I designed it myself, Grandpa. I would not have authorized a deployment with insufficient safety margins. You designed it under significant time pressure, Prince said. Time pressure produces errors. It did not produce errors in this instance, Amir said.
Nissa, working through structural maintenance
At the vessel's secondary console, exchanged a brief, wordless glance with his brother Nishim. The specific, synchronized communication of 2 people who had grown up understanding exactly when their grandfather's complaints required response and when they required simply waiting out. This, they had both concluded several days earlier, required waiting out. The food synthesizer is also producing inferior results compared to standard specifications, Prince continued. I have eaten the same 3 meal configurations for 4 weeks, and none of them taste correctly calibrated. The food synthesizer is functioning at full operational capacity, Namir said from the galley station. I checked it myself this morning, specifically because you mentioned it yesterday, and the day before that. Then perhaps the recipes themselves are flawed, Prince said. Shaheem, the quietest of the 4 brothers, looked up from his own monitoring station with the specific, dry expression he rarely allowed himself to fully display. Grandpa, he said, I think you are simply anxious about what we'll find when we arrive. The vessel's command deck went quiet. Prince Parker looked at his youngest grandson for a long moment. That is an unnecessarily perceptive observation, he said finally. I learned observation from you, Shaheem said.
It was from Prince Parker, as close to a concession as the journey had yet produced. And Rashim, watching the exchange with the specific relief of someone who had been waiting weeks for exactly this kind of break in the tension, allowed himself a small, genuine smile. He's not wrong, Dad, Rashim said quietly. We're all anxious. You're allowed to just say that instead of finding fault with the food synthesizer. Prince was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the star field beyond the vessel's viewport. The same indifferent stars that had watched every chapter of this family's impossible history unfold across more eras than most of them had been alive to fully process. I have not seen my son in years that I cannot fully account for, he said, finally, the specific, rare honesty of a man who reserved vulnerability for moments when complaint had genuinely run its course. I have not seen my daughter, my granddaughters. I do not know what condition we will find them in, or whether the family I remember is the family we will actually find when we arrive. He paused. The food synthesizer was never truly the problem. We know, Grandpa, Nisa said, gently for Nisa. I am aware that you know, Prince said. I simply needed to say it less obliquely, apparently, before the rest of you would stop indulging my complaints about the meal configurations. We will always indulge your complaints, Rashim said. We're your family. That's part of the arrangement. Something moved through Prince Parker's expression that was not quite a smile, but was, for him, adjacent to one. 4 weeks, he said again. Different this time. Less complaint. More simply counting down towards something he had been waiting for, longer than any of them fully understood. The alien world. Convergence. Back at the settlement, the crisis reached a point that demanded every resource the family possessed, operating in genuine, simultaneous coordination. I need all 5 frames, Mary said. The command authority that had once held a billion-person civilization together now applied to the more intimate, equally vital task of holding together everything this smaller community depended on. Cassandra, Princess, I need you working the deep signal and the surface network together. If there's a connection point, a single location where addressing the lattice might also address what's happening below it, find it. Already cross-referencing, Princess said. Amira, continue reinforcing the critical zones. Bui us, whatever team you can. On it, Amira confirmed. Amin, I'll hold the migration as steady as 1 frame can manage, Amin said. It won't be perfect, but it will be something. Mary looked at her family, scattered now across 5 frames and a dozen critical points, each of them carrying a piece of a crisis, too large for any single person to fully address alone. The way this family had always carried everything that mattered most. We've faced larger uncertainties than this, she said. We hold together. We figure out the rest as it comes. It was, as it had always been, exactly enough to keep them moving forward, above them beyond the failing crystal towers and the disordered dragonflights, and the deep pulse that continued its patient, accelerating climb towards something none of them could yet fully name. A small vessel called the Reunion continued cutting its careful path across the dark. 4 weeks from a reunion that none of them, on either side of the impossible distance between them, could yet fully picture. But all of them, in their own way, were counting down toward it. End of episode 7. The Failing Lattice Vamos, Parker Mecha. Shinku Parker Mecha. Episodio 7. El retículo que falla. 17 wa.
Bengre Yukukesi, el mundo alienígena. Las torres de cristal en el borde de la cuenca habían comenzado, por primera vez desde que la familia llegó a este mundo, a agrietarse. Esto se está acelerando más rápido de lo que cualquier modelo predijo, dijo Princess, su voz llevando una urgencia que rara vez se permitía. 3 zonas de retícula de cristal han perdido más del 60% de su estabilidad de resonancia en las últimas 48 horas. Hizo una pausa, recalculando. A este ritmo, estamos viendo fallo total de la red dentro de días, no semanas. Cassandra ya estaba moviendo el Cyber Viper hacia la zona, fallando más cercana. Estoy leyendo la misma aceleración en el pulso profundo, confirmó. Lo que sea que Abaddon se esté convirtiendo, la línea de tiempo se está comprimiendo. Los dragones. La angustia de la migración se había vuelto imposible de ignorar. Están desorientados, reportó Amin. La retícula proporcionaba el ritmo que su migración siempre ha seguido. Sin un ritmo estable que seguir, no saben dónde se supone que deben estar. ¿Puedes guiarlos?, preguntó Mary. Puedo intentarlo, dijo Amin. Pero soy una sola presencia. Hay cientos de ellos. Esto no es sostenible, dijo Amin, después de la 3.ª hora. La forja y las zonas fallando. Amira trabajó toda la noche. Puedo reforzar zonas individuales, reportó, pero no puedo reforzar todas simultáneamente. Sacó su propia proyección. Si priorizo las zonas más cercanas al asentamiento, probablemente podamos comprar otra semana de estabilidad, pero la red misma, el sistema planetario completo, eso está más allá de lo que la forja sola puede mantener unido. Entendido, dijo Mary. Prioriza la protección civil. La Alianza Failing. Nuestras historias más antiguas nunca describieron una corrección a esta velocidad, admitió la comandante mayor a Cassandra. No sé si esto es simplemente cómo el ciclo siempre estuvo destinado a desarrollarse, o si algo lo está haciendo moverse más rápido de lo que debería. Yo tampoco lo sé, dijo Cassandra, pero no lo enfrentamos solas. Eso importa más ahora que nunca, la Tierra. El reencuentro en camino. A bordo del pequeño vehículo cortando su camino cuidadoso a través de la vasta distancia entre dos mundos, Prince Parker se había vuelto, por cualquier medida honesta, considerablemente más difícil de compartir espacio cerrado. 4 semanas, dijo, por lo que Rashim calculó privadamente era la 11ª vez ese día. 4 semanas restantes, y el array de navegación acaba de informarme que nuestra ventana de llegada proyectada cambió por 6 horas debido a una variación gravitacional que nadie marcó antes del lanzamiento. 6 horas, papá, dijo Rashim, con el tono paciente y sufrido de un hijo que había estado manejando el humor de su padre durante la mayor parte de un mes en el espacio profundo. De 6 semanas. Eso no es una variación significativa. Es significativo para mí, dijo Prince. He pasado todo este viaje revisando cada especificación estructural de este vehículo y estoy cada vez más convencido de que el equipo de ingeniería recortó esquinas en la redundancia secundaria de soporte vital. No recorté esquinas, dijo Amir, desde la interfaz de comando, su voz llevando la paciencia medida y específica de alguien que ya había explicado esta exacta preocupación en 4 ocasiones separadas. La redundancia secundaria excede las especificaciones estándar por un margen del 30%. Yo mismo la diseñé, abuelo. Lo diseñaste bajo presión de tiempo significativa, dijo Prince. La presión de tiempo produce errores. No produjo errores en este caso, dijo Amir. Nisir intercambió una mirada breve y sin palabras con su hermano Nishem. La comunicación específica y sincronizada de 2 personas que habían crecido entendiendo exactamente cuando las quejas de su abuelo requerían respuesta y cuando simplemente requerían esperar. El sintetizador de comida también está produciendo resultados inferiores comparados con las especificaciones estándar, continuó Prince. He comido las mismas 3 configuraciones de comida durante 4 semanas y ninguna sabe correctamente calibrada. El sintetizador de comida está funcionando a capacidad operacional completa, dijo Nimir, desde la estación de la cocina. Lo verifiqué yo mismo esta mañana, específicamente porque lo mencionaste ayer y el día anterior. Entonces quizás las recetas mismas están defectuosas, dijo Prince. Shahim, el más callado de los 4 hermanos, levantó la vista de su propia estación de monitoreo. Abuelo, dijo, creo que simplemente estás ansioso por lo que encontraremos cuando lleguemos. La cubierta de comando del vehículo quedó en silencio. Prince Parker miró a su nieto más joven por un largo momento. Esa es una observación innecesariamente perceptiva, dijo, finalmente. Aprendí observación de ti, dijo Shahim. No está equivocado, papá, dijo Rashim, en voz baja. Todos estamos ansiosos. Se te permite simplemente decir eso en lugar de encontrar fallas en el sintetizador de comida. Prince estuvo en silencio por un largo momento, mirando hacia el campo de estrellas más allá de la ventanilla del vehículo. No he visto a mi hijo en años que no puedo contabilizar completamente, dijo, finalmente. No he visto a mi hija, a mis nietas, No sé en qué condición encontraremos a la familia, o si la familia que recuerdo es la familia que realmente encontraremos cuando lleguemos. Hizo una pausa. El sintetizador de comida nunca fue realmente el problema. Lo sabemos, abuelo, dijo Nisir. Suavemente, para Nisir. Soy consciente de que lo saben, dijo Prince. Simplemente necesitaba decirlo menos oblicuamente, al parecer, antes de que el resto de ustedes dejara de inducir mis quejas sobre las configuraciones de comida. Siempre indulgiremos tus quejas, dijo Rashim. Somos tu familia. Eso es parte del arreglo. Algo se movió a través de la expresión de Prince Parker, que no era exactamente una sonrisa, pero era, para él, adyacente a una. 4 semanas, dijo de nuevo. Diferente esta vez. Menos queja. Simplemente contando hacia algo que había estado esperando más tiempo del que cualquiera de ellos entendía completamente. El mundo alienígena. Convergencia. De vuelta en el asentamiento, la crisis alcanzó un punto que exigía cada recurso que la familia poseía, operando en coordinación genuina y simultánea. Necesito los 5 frames, dijo Mary. Cassandra, Princess, necesito que trabajen la señal profunda y la red de superficie juntas. Si hay un punto de conexión, una sola ubicación donde abordar la retícula, también podría abordar lo que está pasando debajo de ella. Encuéntrenlo. Ya haciendo referencias cruzadas, dijo Princess. Amira, continúa, reforzando las zonas críticas. En eso, confirmó Amira. Amin, mantendré la migración tan estable como una sola frame puede manejar, dijo Emin. Mary miró a su familia. Hemos enfrentado incertidumbres más grandes que esta, dijo. Nos mantenemos unidos. Resolvemos el resto a medida que viene. Arriba de ellos, más allá de las torres de cristal fallando y los vuelos desordenados de dragones, y el pulso profundo que continuaba su ascenso, paciente y acelerado hacia algo que ninguno de ellos podía nombrar completamente todavía, un pequeño vehículo lámero. El reencuentro continuaba cortando su camino cuidadoso a través de la oscuridad. 4 semanas de un reencuentro que ninguno de ellos, en ningún lado de la imposible distancia entre ellos, podía imaginar completamente todavía. Pero todos ellos, a su manera, estaban contando hacia él. Fin del episodio 7. El retículo que falla.